Now, I might have quite a few issues with Worthless Appraiser as a whole, but I will admit it's been fairly enjoyable even when at its worst. The thing is despite an episode like this being flawed, it still was very enjoyable, and even ignoring how underwhelming the finale of the fight was, like visually and everything, he just kind of unsheathed the sword. There's nothing really cool about it, it's just like it was over. And that was, a tad disappointing, but I was like, is what it is, we'll see what they do. Once they did the backstory for this lord, it went from a fine and enjoyable episode to like, oh, this is actually fairly well written. Not gonna make you shed a tear, not gonna make you say, oh my god, this is now a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. But while the show may be deeply flawed, I have to admit, when a show can take someone who was pretty generically evil, like, yeah, I knew prior to this episode he was being manipulated by a spirit. I was under the assumption, however, that, like, he's known this spirit for a handful of years, like, from teenager to maybe just when he started out as a teenager. I didn't realize this was like an 8 to 12-year-old kid who met a spirit after being denied friends at every which way, and was manipulating him for his entire life to the point that he's the reason he killed his dad. That definitely elevated it up, and while I have my issues with the finale of the battle at hand, 1 versus 10,000, without a doubt, I think this is the best episode of the show, and I think just really reinforces what I've been saying. The show is at its best when it's most serious. I mean, and there's now a trend that if the first 5 minutes of an episode of this show, whether it's last week or this week, disappoint me, the next 15 minutes of it leave me fairly impressed. It's an interesting formula, but I'm definitely here for more. Of course, want to see my full thoughts and support my work, we got the Patreon, full link of live reactions available exclusively over there if you're so interested. So we will talk about the fight and why I found it disappointing. Like, I liked most of it, it's just the ending kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth. But the backstory was actually pretty good. I mean, maybe I misheard earlier stuff in the episodes, but I was under the assumption that dad died and then he started talking to his spirit, and the spirit manipulated an inexperienced young lord. Didn't realize that it was going to go the route of like, oh yeah, his dad was a legitimately good lord. Like, well respected, well loved, and his kid, was a little sick, a little ill, but, it wasn't contagious or anything. And when he would try to make friends, they would say, ooh, you're gross. Basically, just got rid of him. Like, I mean, it's already hard enough. You're the Lord's son. I mean, some people probably would be worried letting their kids play at the Lord's son, because what if you're playing and, he gets hurt? Even if the Lord is seen as a nice guy, I mean, nobility in this world, right? The idea that he interacts with the spirit, and to be honest, he even kind of fooled me for a couple minutes, because I thought what they were building into was that the spirit manipulated him after he discovered power. Because I thought it was just, I've seen enough shows. Hell, look at A Ranking of Kings as an example. Sometimes the things that start off maybe a little iffy, they like you for a little bit, or then maybe they go crazy. So I thought what they were going to build into was that they were really nice to each other for a while, and then he discovered power. No, it seems like he wanted to do this the whole time. So dad was a little sick, a little miasma, curses and stuff, but probably would have lived, right? And even if we assume he still was going to die early, he at least wouldn't have been bedridden for like 5 years. To be honest, it fooled me again here, because I was like, I mean, I don't know why this is happening, but the book does say that it should be fine. Turns out he used a spell to manipulate it. Every single day for I don't know how many years. Like, even if we assume he's on the older range that I gave, like, say he was 12 when he met the spirit, the fact that for, like, probably 5 years he was giving him poison. Single doses aren't going to do a whole lot, but if you do that shit for a long enough time, he was eventually bedridden to the point that he died years of just sleeping in a bed. Not only did you murder your father, you ruined his quality of life for the final stretch. And then what ends up happening? Well, the spirit then takes advantage of an even more fragile soul and tells him that characters like Ein are demons. And yeah, he's kind of an idiot, he's ignorant, but I mean, if you're a 12-year-old kid who got manipulated by a spirit at a young age, I'm sure it could happen to the best of us. And that whole dynamic, I think, was actually fairly well written. Because prior to the backstory dropping and him popping up into the crowd, he's a demon, damn it, you should do it. And they're like, bitch, why would we care? That could be the second coming of Satan. And he's already given us a better quality of life than you've ever given us. I gotta admit, that's like one of my favorite scenes I've seen this season, because I've seen so many times where like they try to do that and they're like, oh my god, he's a demon. It's like, bitch, he literally just saved you. I was so happy that the crowd's like, I don't care. That could literally be the worst person on earth and they just did more for us than you ever have. Love that scene. And I was like, man, let's just cut the guy's head off, right? Like, we know he's manipulated by a demon, woe is me, but he's done some scummy shit, let's just cut his head off. Then they drop the backstory and I say, oh, he was a child when he started getting manipulated. Yeah, kids are dumb, so I completely get why that happened. I mean, I would have accepted it even if he was an adult, because most adults are dumb too, but, you know, there's a different level of emotional intelligence, so I kind of give it more of a pass. And in general, I thought it was fairly competent. Like, it's not the best thing I've seen all season. It's the best thing I've seen in the show, but it's not like the best thing, oh my god, I'm going to remember this for years to come, but it's like a good moment. And because we're approaching the end of a season, if you continue to give me more good, solid moments like these, I'll be more excited and enticed to watch a season 2 should you give me one. Now, the intro was the 1 versus 10,000. In general, I like it. I really do. I just think the ending's underwhelming. So, you know, it starts off, he does a few different attacks, and it's not enough to take out an entire army. So they build into this moment where he's like, I'm going to overload everything and just do one big attack. And I was cool with that. I really was. I was like, okay, do something cool visually with it. The animation, the art direction, nothing crazy so far. But you could do something really cool here. And then make him pass out. Maybe he, you know, has to go away for a little bit just because, you know, he drained himself. And then he just kind of draws his sword. Nothing really happens. We cut to sunny skies and then immediately he gets healed. And it just felt underwhelming, to put it nicely. Like, they could have done so much more with it, and I think that's my biggest hindrance with the episode. I guess, at face value, him needing to get back up immediately was needed because then the Lord comes in, but, you know, I would have wrote it in the way that the Lord comes, like, half a day later after he's recovered. But if you need him to get back up, at least make it flashy. Like, I'm not saying we have to be monkey brain about it all the time, but the show doesn't really go crazy visually to begin with. This was a moment to, like, do an insanely good-looking attack, but it just kind of fell flat. But luckily, the most mediocre stuff was at the start, and the rest of the episode was actually pretty gas, if you ask me. I know the show's been a mixed bag for sure, but, you know, I appreciate that even when it's at its weakest, I have at least enjoyed elements of it. And yeah, like I said, I mean, episode 1, a couple weeks back, we had a more serious episode, and then last week was mostly serious, with this episode being completely serious. And to be honest, you know, the show's at its best when it does stuff like this, even though you know your character's OP and always gonna win. At least the world and dynamics surrounding the character in question are, you know, more engaging than, I guess, the dude who's collecting waifus in his eyes left and right, which are supposed to be hard to find, but I guess once you have one sister, it's easy to find them all. Either way, I definitely think this was the strongest episode out of the batch, and I'm excited to see what they do next week. You let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell. Like I mentioned, we got those full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll just give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got David Paul, Brian Matala, Hody Nobert, McCartney, Wendy, Thomas Kozes, Robert Franklin, Alan, John Menger, and we also have Gabber Tim. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care. You know, have a good one.